Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and finally, welcome to my long-awaited God of War Ragnarok review. Also, mind you, this will be relatively spoiler-free. Just a note, however, I will be featuring gameplay and details that we've previously seen from articles, as well as that last really big story trailer. So you won't necessarily see anything that's too new that you haven't seen before, but if you still wish to go into the game knowing relatively nothing, I do actually recommend that you listen to this video opposed to actually watching it, because I don't want to spoil this experience for you. It's a really good game. But before we do begin, I do have to say a quick thank you to Santa Monica Studios for making this review possible, as they did give me a code last week to play the game early. So big thank you to them, as well as the fantastic team, for making this all possible. It's also worth noting that I did play God of War Ragnarok on PlayStation 5, prioritizing performance over graphical fidelity. So I can only really touch on how the PlayStation 5 version of this game actually performed. Now, God of War Ragnarok has a lot, and I mean a lot, going for it, from its highly praised 2018 requel in the Nordic pantheon. So, let's quickly recap the events to set the stage. The retired god killer of Olympus, Kratos, has retreated to the lands of Midgard. Since arriving, he's built a new life and had a son, Atreus, later known as Loki of Jotunheim. This game largely revolves around following on the boy's mother's dying wishes, as Faye wished to have her ashes spread across the highest peak in all the 9 realms. But this was no easy task, as it was located in Jotunheim, the fabled and lost land of the giants. This journey takes our characters across the likes of a spectacular supporting cast, featuring the smartest man alive, Mimir, the ever-talented dwarven blacksmiths, Brock and Sindri, and the exiled Vanir goddess, and former wife of Odin, Freya. This journey only grows harder as they are hunted by the hound dogs of Asgard, Magni, Modi, and Balder. This ultimately culminates in the death of the sons of Thor and Balder himself, sowing both the seeds of vengeance as well as Ragnarok in tow. With Faye's ashes spread in the dead lands of Jotunheim, Kratos and Atreus return back home, knowing that the wrath of the gods will fully be upon them once Fimbulwinter clears. So now, with God of War Ragnarok, 3 years has passed since these events. So the end seems nigh, and the apocalypse is finally here. So, from what you can tell, this immediately brings us up to date with Ragnarok, with the bond between Kratos and Atreus growing that much stronger. But with Thor at their doorstep, as well as the Allfather Odin undoubtedly gaining more of an interest in what threat Kratos and Atreus do pose to his rule, the prophecy of Ragnarok seems uncertain. So yeah, pretty big stakes at hand with how this story is supposed to unravel. Now mind you, I won't touch on too much of the narrative details, that will be left for a spoiler review on Sunday, but if I'm honest, I think Ragnarok as an overall narrative really does land. Really delivering and making us all feel that, yeah, this is it. The story also largely benefits from it being placed during the tail end of Fimbulwinter. So during the first hour or two, we are kind of introduced to the dangers as well as tone that this game is going for. All bets are off the table at every point in time, and this is felt from start all the way to the finish. And whilst the story has some great key moments of levity, courtesy of the amazing Brock and Sindri.
Anybody need a snack? Kratos? Snack?
I do not need a snack.
You always feel this looming shadow kind of lurking over our beloved heroes, kind of prying away at their fears and doubts, in both the form of Odin as well as Ragnarok itself. Because what is worth the price of war? So this beautiful layer of tension is held all the way to the very end, leading to both a satisfying and terrifying ending. And this story is really delivered from the outstanding performances of the entire cast. From the gruff and stoic portrayal of Kratos by Christopher Judge, to the optimistic naivete of Atreus by Sunny, to the sorrowful and vengeful Freya from Danielle Bussetti. Every actor here puts in an incredible performance that really hits you in your soul. There's never really a single scene or moment that kind of falls flat to me. Plus, the long-awaited inclusions of Angrboda, Thor, and Odin are extremely welcome, adding a new flavour to the cast, and a new role to every scene they are in. However, my one current issue with these characters in particular is that they are so new that I don't feel we nearly spend enough time with each of them. They are all very interesting and likeable in their own way. For so, I wanted to get to know each of them a little bit more. I don't know if it was a pacing issue or if there was any content cut, but honestly, I would have appreciated a bit more time with these characters just to flesh them out a little bit more. Again, this might go back to what I originally said about this series being envisioned as a trilogy opposed to 2 games. Even with that in mind, this game took me about 38 hours to complete, and it was a very dense 38 hours of non-stop engagement. And luckily, because of this game never felt like it had overstayed its welcome. Even when I was exploring away from the main narrative, never at any point did I feel a sense of burnout. Something I unfortunately do feel does plague the semi-open world and open world genre as a whole. So Ragnarok to me was a narrative engaging thrill ride from start to finish, with incredible, amazing and colourful characters that really had me engaged with the story from beginning to the very end. Also, absolutely worth mentioning, side quests are definitely worth your time here. So many of them are beautifully well done and without a doubt absolutely worth exploring. As engaging as the main narrative is, don't get me wrong, it's really fucking good. You would most definitely be doing yourself a disservice if you were to ignore them. Now, by the end of the game, I must admit, I was shedding quite a lot of tears. Not out of sadness of anything that had happened in the endgame, but I distinctly remember saying to myself that I didn't want it to end. This feels like a very conclusive, shut the book and door kind of ending. Since the 2018 game, I have just fallen in love with these masterly crafted characters. Ones who make me laugh and cry. So I still definitely now feel quite a bit of that heartache, knowing that this is the last time we'll probably be seeing a lot of these characters. So here's hoping that we eventually get DLC in the future, because I have to be honest, I'm still not ready to say goodbye to these characters. I just adore them so much that I can't really fathom a game that doesn't have this colourful cast. Also worth mentioning that there is a bit of a post-game, so there is still plenty of stuff to do, much like the 2018 game. But if I was to compare, it does seem like Ragnarok has a bit more content. So whilst my main playthrough with me finishing the main campaign took about 38 hours, doing all the post-game stuff rounded me out to about 42 to 43 hours. So to me, as first playthroughs go, this was a really solid and very, very fun experience. The only real downside right now is the fact we are currently lacking a new game plus. And whilst yes, I can start a fresh save, I think it would have benefited the game that much more if they already had this implemented, because I really want to carry my save across opposed to starting again, especially with all the gear and moves I have unlocked. In my opinion, I think that Santa Monica Studios has really crafted something very, very special here. From its stunning visuals, to its heartfelt, engaging story of family, tragedy, and prophecy, it's a game that not only fulfills its status as a sequel, but also a very, very strong successor. Whilst the 2018 game, for the most part, kind of focused on being its own thing, Ragnarok feels like a game that embraces the gameplay design of previous installments, whilst combining it with the core values of the 2018 game. It makes for this blend that feels like a culmination of ideas, values, and concepts of previous God of Wars. It essentially feels like a hybrid of the series, and I think it does it right, without a doubt being my favorite game of the series so far. That's not to say it is all smooth sails, as narratively there are some shortcomings from its world and source material I would have liked to have seen be touched on, or at least expanded on in some way. I can't talk about that here, because, well, it's spoilers of course, but even with that in mind, it never really took away from the main story or the narrative flow of it. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time with the game from a story standpoint. With the story side of things now covered, let's talk about gameplay and, most importantly, boss fights, as they are staples of the series that really cemented its legacy. So first off, let's touch on gameplay. And here, the team really dialed things up to 11. The amount of creativity, thought, and variety is astounding, with how you can literally dismantle your enemies in both immaculate and rewarding ways. And this is really emphasized by the game's skill tree system. The more you progress in the game is when it starts to shine, as you're able to unlock more tools and feel rewarded from both playing better and exploring each of the worlds. I will note that about 90% of the skills are very practical in most situations. But of course, it's very clear that there are some skills designed to be stronger than others, even from very early on. But still, it gives you a diverse array of tools to play around with and gut your enemies. This is further complemented by the game's token system, allowing you to further enhance your playstyle in new and interesting ways, especially if you're going for a particular build. Unfortunately, the UI is kind of to be desired. From its armor sets to move lists to weapons, I personally found the design of the UI to be a bit jarring, as there's a lot going on here with numbers, and at the start, I did find it a bit overwhelming. By the end of the game, I had adjusted and did learn how to use the user interface, but it was definitely a lot to take in and look at, as there's just numbers everywhere. As we dive deeper, I will say that the feel of gameplay is incredible. And what I mean is that each weapon here feels like it has its own weight and character. The Leviathan axe feels incredibly heavy, but satisfying to swing at as it collides with enemies, splitting their heads open like watermelons. And the Blades of Chaos freely whip through the air as they shred enemies like straw in a field. This is all really courtesy of the fantastic foley and sound design in-game, as each swing and each cleave is complemented by audio that feeds that immersion, and this is further enhanced by the DualSense controller. This thing really put in the work, and I had to charge it a fair few times before I finished my first playthrough. Also, if you can't quite tell, this game is pretty visceral in its violence, but it's never violence for the sake of violence. It's always done to help emphasize the point of not just how powerful these weapons are, but the characters behind them and how you can control them, which in my opinion is one of the most important things for players to subconsciously react to in-game. So gameplay doesn't just feel better than the last game, but it adds more to an otherwise solid formula. I describe it best as extremely polished with extra layers. Now yet, another thing that shines is boss design and enemy variety, and my god, did they knock this out of the stratosphere. One of the biggest issues of the previous installment was that there was an unfortunate lack of enemy variety, as it was troll after troll after troll after troll, but here they clearly took that criticism to heart and have unleashed what I could only deem as legion upon us. And honestly, I loved all of them. It's genuinely impressive with the amount of enemy variety each realm has of each species. It helps mix up your game plan and approach to combat with new and interesting tactics for each and every encounter. Also, fuck these guys. These guys suck. In terms of boss fights, man, do these really deliver on some great spectacles. There's a lot of diverse and unique enemy types that really keep you on your toes. Some may not attack like the others you've met before, or even mix up their patterns in order to break any form of muscle memory you've had from previous encounters of enemies of that type. You may end up in a gank fight that forces you to use other moves you've never touched before but purchased. And probably my personal favorite touch here is how layered the boss fights are. What I mean by this, outside of the spectacle of the fight itself, each boss more or less has a phase 2. Once again, encouraging creative thinking on the spot for a satisfying payoff. Now, let's touch on level design, and wow, the team behind this is unbelievably talented. Each realm and world really has its own character and personality. From the desolate, abandoned wastelands of Midgard, to the charring hot springs of Vanaheim, to the burning world of Muspelheim, each realm shines in its own way here. So no world ever really feels the same. And what further shows these differences are the puzzles and mechanics behind each of them. I haven't felt this way about puzzles in a very long time, but I actually relished the challenge of any puzzle presented before me, at least until 30-minute passed, and the urge to spike my controller intensified. But jokes aside, I really enjoyed my time across the 9 realms. Unfortunately, there are some shortcomings here, as realms like Helheim, Niflheim, and Muspelheim aren't quite as well developed. They are significantly smaller in scale, and whilst I said they are gorgeous, I just wish that there was more of a reason for me to want to come back to those realms. So again, I go back to what I said, fingers crossed for DLC, as I'd love to see more from them. To cap things off, we now come to the musical score of this game, and man, do I wish I had like an inkling of talent that flows through Bear McCreary's veins, because once again, he has gone to create something so thematically spectacular, it's hard to not be immersed in each and every scene. The score is breathless and beautifully composed. From its slow crescendos to its beautiful striking sound of strings, each and every track has a beautiful and mystical feel to it. So every bit of music we have here is absolutely stellar. Truly one of the most talented music composers in the gaming industry right now. So, with everything said, what is my summary about God of War Ragnarok? Personally, I think this is an absolutely phenomenal experience. Yes, experience, not just a game. From start to finish, I never once wanted to put down my controller. Like, at all, and in my many years of gaming, never have I played something that has made me cry, laugh, and cheer for my characters on screen. I typically struggle with getting into games like this, but the writing and the character crafting is so masterfully done that it was hard for me to not be sucked into this world. Ragnarok doesn't just feel like a culmination of the Norse series of games, but one that embraces the roots and heritage of the Olympus series, finding this unique hybrid blend that mashes both the Olympus series of games and Norse series of games together, and it does so unbelievably well. And from a technical standpoint, this game is absolutely beautiful. I can't emphasize how pretty this game is. And luckily, it's complemented by engaging and expressive gameplay, one that doesn't hold your hand, but encourages you to figure out for yourself. The music is masterfully crafted, and Ragnarok has a story that I feel hits nearly every beat I wanted to be touched on. It's a truly phenomenal experience that I encourage all of you to play through yourselves. Ragnarok feels like a labor of love for the Santa Monica team, and that love really bleeds through on this masterfully done canvas. It's a project they should all be proud of, and I hope all of you home can share in that experience and can enjoy this game for what it is. With that noted, I will of course be having my spoiler review coming out this Sunday. It will be more story focused than anything else. Plus, I do have a Santa Monica dev interview with narrative director Matt Sophos. I highly recommend you check it out, as it was a really fun sit down and chat, talking about all things God of War related, and me kind of picking his brain as to the thought process behind a lot of our beloved characters, and what exactly was going on with them before we jumped into game. With that said, everyone, this has been it for my spoiler-free review of God of War Ragnarok. Now, if you've played through the game yourself, please do comment down below, as I'd love to hear your own experience with the game. But with that said, that is it for me. The Matt Sophos interview will be up tomorrow at 9:30 PM BST, so please do keep an eye out for that. But for now, everyone, as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting, as Ragnarok is finally here. I've been dying to say that for so long, my god. Please take care, everyone. I'll see you soon.